So there we are, the figure's in, a couple of birds flying around, making it look like a good midday experience. But if you want to know how I did that, watch after this and you'll see exactly what happened there. I used that is the plan for the figure, right? It's essentially a rectangle with an egg stuck on top of it. All right, so we simplified things. So it is a step process, a step one, step two. Step one on that figure, you'll see, is just forming that basic rectangle in and putting an egg on top. Step two was colouring it in. And step three was refining it. And that's it, 3 steps. So if you like that, watch how I did it. Don't get frustrated, keep it simple. Again, 3 colours, a couple of brushes, 2 brushes and a bit of a knife thrown in there. And step by step. So be patient with yourself, do it step 1, step 2, step 3, walk away, have a break, and you'll end up with something like that. All right? So hope you enjoy what you see just now, and I'm going to see you again on the next painting. So I start by scraping away the area where I want to put the figure. And then I mix some of the pinky red because that's the colour of that part of the dress. And she's basically got a top on and a skirt, and she got one leg sort of exposed on the left-hand side. So it's pretty simple. I haven't sort of bothered about hands or having one arm poking out or anything like that. That's all complications. And since we're just trying to learn how to paint and to put the elements together so that we end up with something that looks pretty good, I've kept the figure simple. But by keeping it simple, we also make it very identifiable. There'll be no doubt about what this is as we get into it. So step 1 is really looking at the shape and just colouring in that shape. I pick out whatever the base colour is of the top or the dress. I generally just put that in. I don't worry about the darks or the lights yet. I just sort of cover it in, get it sort of blocked in. And then when we've got the next step will be to darken the darks and lighten the lights. Look where the shadows are and where the light bounces, and then we pedal our way into those parts, and that'll bring out the shape and round it out. You can see the back, the top of her back is exposed up there with a bit of skin tint. That's just a bit of the red and a bit of white together. And now the leg is sort of shaping up down there, the left-hand side. And you notice I've just put in a general skin colour. I haven't darkened the shadow areas yet or lightened the areas where the sun clips. I'm just putting in some block colours at this stage. Now we're getting to the part where her head's sort of slightly turned and we're seeing some hair, some nice dark hair under a hat, and the hat will find its way on top of that here in a moment. But even now at this early stage we can see what it is without even having to lighten anything yet or darken very much. Clear a figure of a young lady standing by the water looking out to sea. Well, the question then is, what's she looking at? And then we get into building a story. And of course, I'm a great believer in paintings telling a story, because if we want to connect with people who look at the painting, first of all, we want them to look at it. And so how do we get that? Well, we paint something that has an interest to them. And so this is a common scene that I'm painting. We've all been near the beach. We've all walked by the beach. We've all had a sister or a mother or an auntie or someone in the family, or maybe a girlfriend who's walked by the beach. And so we've all seen this type of situation. And of course the sea is one of those things that constantly changing. It's always got something of interest to look at. So we've got a number of dynamics in this painting that would appeal to the passerby. So now I've gone into a sort of a grey mauve. That skirt at the bottom is basically a white with a pattern to it, and the pattern has pink and green. It's blotches of flowers or something like that. So I'm painting in what that shadow colour would be of a white skirt. Now we're shaping. So this is step 2. I'm drawing the shadow area of that leg. And all of a sudden we can see, yeah, that's a leg. Now, if we didn't know it was a leg, then we certainly do now, because it now becomes part of what we understand to be a figure. The other leg there has been indicated by a shadow line where the skirt's been wrapped around that leg. But now back up to the top. And I'm just darkening that shadow area of the top on the left-hand side. Now we've got some folds across that top. And it's just starting to make a lot of sense now. You see, step 2 is this part, darkening the darks and lightening the lights. Look where the shadow is, look where the light falls, and simply put them in. If it's a red, darken the red with a little bit of blue, and that swings it down into a darker tone. Remember, we've got a limited palette here. We're only using light red, cobalt blue, and yellow ochre, but I've jumped in a new red. Right, we've got some cadmium red there. So this is a local colour of the dress and the top. And so when we get to things like figures, right, we look for those other colours, we bring them in. They only occupy a small area of the overall painting, so they can sit in that painting without challenging or upsetting the general fabric of all the painting. Well, just there I touched that top of the skirt. You see, one of the things in painting is to have parts that are sharp and to have parts that simply disappear. They blend into what's around them. That's the difference between painting a figure like this and avoiding that stuck-on look, which some artists sort of end up doing. It becomes very, very chiselled look. A chiselled sort of figure, and it looks like it's been stuck on. Well, by having these parts disappear and other parts emerging, I get around that problem. And now that figure's starting to look very much part of the whole painting. I'm lightening that skirt now because we're seeing it's white, so we've got sun bouncing through there. And we got the waves behind there, and they're sort of generally light. So by using that grey as a backdrop, it shows the shadow colour of that white dress. A little bit on the hat there, that's shaping that hat now. The brim is in receipt of the sun. Now I'm sort of looking at something else now. What's she looking at? Well, this is sort of a bonus part, but I always like to tie up a story in a painting. So I'm going to put in a seagull there flying around, flapping his wings and disappearing away a little bit. And so she's now looking at the seagull, perhaps. But it certainly occupies an area over there which is fairly vacant. And now we've got something to look at there and to build our story out. And again, what is this shape? How do I get the shape? How do I know what it is? Well, I simply look at the shape, darken it in, and if there's a little bit of light somewhere, I'll pop a bit of light on there. Of course, the bird's got some legs, so I'll try and put a couple of legs on there as well. By doing that, I think it becomes a bird. Now there's a few more there, and back to the knife, and we're going to tidy this up and finish it off. And a few more slides across there with the knife. Those little rivulets, those little waves that run up the beach, and we're bouncing that along in there. They roll over here and there. But we're adding character and depth and meaning to that foreground now. And that's really the last part of the whole painting. It's building out the story and finishing off. A little bit of a wave is wrapping around her foot there, and that's all normal. You know, we got a little bit, we're tinkling the water. There it is, splashing up around her foot. Her heel there, and then more underneath there, and there we are. Nice painting. Hope you enjoyed that.